now call this meeting of the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Commission to order. Secretary, would you take roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Parks?
Present.
Commissioner Barraza? I see you right there. Commissioner Singh?
Present.
Commissioner Cummings?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Present.
Commissioner Apuda?
Present.
Vice Chair Dolan?
Here.
And Chair McCoy?
Present. We will now begin the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everyone please stand? Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will start with the approval of the agenda.
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Chair McCoy. We have two changes to the agenda. A file ID 21-23013, item 5A, approval of minutes for July 12, 2021. We are requesting that this be continued to August 2nd at our next meeting. Item 7C as in cat, ID 21-22960-01 says it's a hearing, a second hearing for the agreement between City and WRT. It's in fact a workshop and not a hearing. And those are the two changes.
Okay, thank you. I would like to propose a change to the agenda order. I would like to move unscheduled communication to be heard after member reports and comments to allow the public to participate without having to remain online all evening. Are there any other proposed changes to the agenda?
Sorry, City Clerk, are we putting off approval of last meeting's minutes until August? Is that what I heard?
Yes, sir, until our next meeting, which is August 2nd, and to which I will have both the July 12th and July 19th minutes for you.
Okay. Why, I'm sorry, why are we putting off approval of the minutes from last meeting?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to them. I had a council meeting on Thursday, and I wanted to give you guys enough time to review them instead of one day.
Understand, thank you.
Are there any other proposed changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Cummings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary, please conduct a roll call vote.
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Commissioner Barraza?
Yes.
Commissioner Singh?
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Apuda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dolan?
Yes.
And Chair McCoy?
Yes.
Passes 8-0.
Thank you. The clerk will provide the minutes from the July 2nd, 2021 meeting at our next meeting on August 2nd, 2021 for consideration and approval. We will now move on to member reports and comments. Are there any commission members that have any reports or comments to make? I will start with Commissioner Parks. Do you have any comments or reports?
Yes, I just wanted to make a quick comment. So I watched the last city council meeting. Sorry, there's some feedback here. Thank you. So I watched the last city council meeting just to kind of understand how what we're doing as a commission is coming to the council. And I went back today before this meeting just to look at our bylaws. And to me, what it looks like we should be doing is it's the parks director should be actually making a report to the council, or Chair McCoy or Vice Chair or a designee. And when we pulled the item related to the WRT contract, in fact, Councilmember Maxwell also pulled the item and wasn't aware if our commission had a chance to look at it. And when City Manager Escueda talked about it, he didn't make any mention of us looking at it and having concerns about not having, the information provided in advance. So I just wanted to mention that because I want to make sure that the council understands what we're doing and why we're making the decisions we're making and, what information we need moving ahead. So those are my comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks, for that. Commissioner Cummings, do you have any reports or comments?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller, do you have any reports or comments?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Singh, any reports or comments?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Vice Chair Dolan, do you have any reports or comments?
None, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Apuda, do you have any comments or reports? Yes, go for it.
There we go. I couldn't unmute. Yes, just a quick comment that I will have to leave by 7:30. I just want you all to be aware of that. Chair McCoy.
Okay, thank you for that. We will now move on to unscheduled communications. City Clerk, is there anyone that would like to make comments in the public?
Not at this time.
Thank you. We will now move on to new matters and workshops. Workshops are for informational purposes only. The commission will not be taking any action and will not be taking public comment on them. We will start with item 7A. Sorry about that. It's a workshop for the fiscal year 2021-2022 Parks budget as approved by council. Will staff or the administration please begin the workshop?
Henry, I believe you have this data that we prepared.
I do, Tommy.
Okay, so I think you have it to share, or where is my clerk? Brianna?
Right here. Yes.
Can you bring that up, or if not, if you can share, I have it.
I gave you the rights to share, Henry.
Okay, so let me bring that up then. Can everyone see a schedule on the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you will, again, my name's Henry Fierro. I am the budget manager with the city of Fresno, and I will give you a high overview of this item 7A, which in essence summarizes the FY 2022 Parks' budget. And the layout to this schedule is from left to right. That first column is our funding sources for FY 22. And for another way of looking at it is the city has multiple checkbooks, if you will, to fund services, fund activities, operational needs, capital needs. So on that first left-hand column, again, you are seeing the various funding sources. That first one is our general fund. And to the right of that, you'll see then a high levels funding source description and where the funding is coming from within the city. Big picture is in the general fund, we have various taxes that come into the door. We have business license fees, hotel fees, charges for services, and other miscellaneous types of funding sources. In this case, for the parks budget, you're going to see to the right what was adopted as far as the revenue or funding source. In this case, it was $1,764,300. That is what the department anticipates to bring in the door as far as general fund revenue. On the other side of the coin is then the adopted expenditure budget. And that is the appropriations then the department will utilize to cover, again, be it their operating or their capital needs that have been budgeted. And in this case, you're looking at $155,900. There were a couple items that were added into the budget per council's motions. For example, there was a motion that also added $4 million on top of what was proposed at the start of our budget hearings. There were a couple other motions, but that $4 million in essence was one of the bigger items that had been approved by council. From there, you're now going to see, if you will, various grant type funds. And you'll see below the general fund is the federal grants. We're looking at $248,600 that's budgeted in 22. Below that is the state grants. We also have some local grants. From there, below that, now you're seeing the various Measure P funding sources. That first one is for existing parks, capital and O&M. You'll see that revenue was budgeted at $13.6 million versus $11.8 million that was assigned as appropriations to be spent, again in 22. Another Measure P funding source is for new parks and facilities. You'll see that revenues was at $6,358,200. Appropriations were fairly close to that revenue amount, $6,345,600. Below that, you'll see another Measure P funding source is the Youth Senior Program Job Training. Revenues at $2.5 million versus appropriations is just under $2 million. And then two more Measure P funding sources, arts and culture, which was at $3.5 million revenue. At this time, there are no appropriations that have been established against that revenue source. Similar to that, we have a item or a funding source for, in essence, fiscal control, and that is at $221,800. What at this point is showing at zero appropriations. Now with that, we have, again, additional funding sources for the department. They have a park special projects. And one of the biggest revenue drivers for this fund is the gate fees at the regional parks facilities. You'll see it in totality, it's $1.3 million revenue, $1.3 million appropriation expense. We also have contracted services from various sources such as Fresno Unified, Central Unified, Fresno County Office of Education, just under $640,000 revenue and expense. We also have the Japanese Garden capital improvement. That's driven by the interest fees, which is at $134,200. I'm going to move on to the next page.
Henry, can I ask a question before you move off this?
Sure.
I'm sorry, this is just a question of clarity. So all of these lines are essentially revenue in, expense out, they're flat, or in some cases, we're not spending the revenue, except for the general fund. And if I just want to make sure I understand this, we have spent about 21 million more than we've taken in that line. Is that correct?
Well, one way, if you will, Mr. Dolan, to look at it is the department is budgeted at $23,155,000 of appropriations to spend. On the revenue side, that $1,764,300, that is the amount of revenue the department anticipates to generate with its own activities, say such as gate fees. Now that differential that you're seeing between the $1.8 million and the $23.2 million, that differential is going to be covered by the general fund in totality, sales tax, property tax, and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I also have a question on this slide before you move on.
Sure.
Just learning to understand the city's budgeting process. You have a very difficult job, Henry, getting this all together. So two examples here, the arts and culture line item, and then the Measure P program implementation. I understand why we don't see the adopted expenses. I want to understand better, what is the process then for allocations happening moving forward if they're not in the adopted budget? So like the $7,000 that we approved last week for the working with the Fresno Arts Council, So how does that work? What does that process look like?
Sure. Actually, Tommy, if I could ask for your guidance on that.
Yeah, I mean, so the process is that in partnership with you guys, with the group, again, it'll be an ongoing thing starting kind of like now, but really get serious in January, and then it'll get real serious in March. We'll start coming to you after all the information you've received during the course of the 9 months here on park facility needs, staffing plans, all of the contracted services we do. We'll then start that January process of building the budget for next year. And so we will work with you guys to build that budget, operations, capital, and then that'll be an iterative process that we get to, and it'll be around, it'll finally get presented to the council, probably like that last week in May. And then from the council from the mayor submits, the way the charter is written, the mayor has to submit a balanced budget to the council 30 days before the fiscal year ends. And then once we transfer the balanced budget proposal to them, then they do what you guys saw this couple of weeks ago. They start adding, subtracting, adjusting, and then together we work together to kind of have a final adopted balanced budget, which is what we're showing here. So you guys will be we'll be bringing information to you guys. You guys will recommend to council, kind of like the mayor recommended to council a balanced budget. But once it gets to council, then it's really council's authority to spend money. They have the way the charter is written, they get to make the call on what gets funded, what doesn't, sources of revenue, and that's the process that they'll go through. But our job, when I say our job in cooperation with you guys, is to present the information on purpose of the expenditure, the benefit of the expenditure, how it fits with mission, vision, goals, and in this case, Measure P. And then we do our best to frame that for them, and then ideally they adopt it or they make adjustments to it and move forward that way. So that's kind of the process. We'll work with you on all these. Again, starting in about January, when we'll get all of our mid-year numbers from what we had forecasted. So in January, we'll get the mid-year numbers. We'll see, are we above or below on our revenue projections? Are we above or below on our expense projections? So that'll be an adjustment period, depending upon if we're on budget with revenue and expenses or off. We'll make some adjustments there. And then ideally that it rolls into now, okay, how do we want to prepare the budget for the following year? And for us, it'll be the FY23 budget year. Typically what we do when we build a budget, separate from like the commission here, is we go around and talk to council members about what's your expectation, what are your goals, what are your priorities. We meet with them and they feed us all this information, and that goes into the budget. We'll do a similar exercise with you guys. What are your mission, vision, goals? Again, we've got Measure P ordinance that kind of guides us on where we got to kind of be in with the expenditure, and we'll build the budget. We'll build the budget similarly that way. It's a long answer, but it's a lot of work, and it's a time-consuming effort, and it's real iterative. It's very, very, very iterative.
I have a question. By the way, Diego. So if I'm breaking up, that's the reason. I don't have a very good connection. But anyway, a couple of questions I have. One is a number related to the new projects for Measure P, $6.3 million. And also the other item related to the ATP trails, beautify Saucon River. Where is the breakdown or the itemized list of those items? Where do I see it? And by the way, I wanted to make a comment. This year, as I was trying to follow the city budget, it was hard to understand where the numbers, what the components those numbers were. All the motions that were made, they didn't have dollar amount. I'm sorry, I had to make that comment, but if somebody could give me the answer to the components of those two numbers, 6.3 million and 1.9, if there's a document somewhere that I could see it, or if you could show it somewhere.
Yeah, I believe if I'm correct, I may be wrong. I think I think Henry at the last meeting had sent out links to Brianna to the line item detail budget and the overall budget document. And the line item detail gives you the build up for the 1.99, the 6.345, the 11.793. It has the detailed breakdown of that. It's in the link that's titled line item detail. That's what that document is. That date is. I apologize. It's probably 20 pages.
Who did it come from? From
should have came.
Director?
I think what we did was we had Henry send it to Brianna, and then Brianna sent it out to all the commissioners. Did that how it went, Brianna?
What link was it for?
It was for the budget documents on our website. It was the whole total budget document, kind of like the base one we gave to council, and then it's got the line item detail that shows the breakdown. There were 2 links that we'd sent. Should have went out either Monday or Tuesday, I believe.
Of last week?
Last week, yeah.
Let me check.
But it would have came from Brianna.
And I got this from Henry?
Yeah.
I didn't see anything like that.
And then we had emailed all these documents because the Measure P numbers did not change. So these were also documents that we had sent, I think, either in advance of your first meeting or your second meeting where it was the Monday before we were making the presentation to council. So we made presentation to council, I think it was June 14th. So it might have been June 7th where we emailed the PDFs of those sections.
Yes. Tommy, are you talking about the backup that Henry sent me for items 7A and 7B?
That's what we sent out for this meeting, but at the close of last meeting, I remember we had sent the links out to the line item detail and then the budget document, and I believe I saw you send those out to the commissioners, but if not, we can, and again, the PDFs were sent to the commission, I think it was June 7th for that meeting on June, whatever your first meeting was, because it was the week before we were making presentation to council, and I was apologizing, saying, "Man, I am so sorry. You're going to see this 1 week before council sees it." But we can get you that document again. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, because the number that we got that TJ gave us at the very beginning has a different number. It was 4.8 million for new projects. So now it's a higher number. I just want to know what was that was added to that category. And so thank you very much. If you could share that with us, I would really appreciate it.
Yep.
I'll circle back with Brianna and get that information, Tommy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up question to my initial question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So in the 2 line items with adopted expenses of 0, that means that none of that revenue will be expended in this fiscal year. So it will not happen until 2023.
Oh, no, I apologize. My apologies. So what that means is as of this moment, council has not approved appropriation of those dollars. And again, that's because the Measure P ordinance was clear that you couldn't spend arts and culture until you had the cultural arts plan done. So that's the work you guys will do, the cultural arts plan. Then you'll be in a position to appropriate, well, to make recommendations, and then that'll go to council, and council will either approve that appropriation or not approve the appropriation. But the council will consider the appropriation recommendation that you submit to them. But right now, we have not submitted any appropriation recommendation to them because we got to get the cultural arts plan completed first.
Okay, so recommendations can happen and new appropriations can be made even if they're not in the existing adopted budget.
Correct.
Okay. And where did the money for that we approved last or recommended last week for the cultural arts plan consultant, is that from this cultural arts line?
Correct. That would come out of the 3.548 million, but it's still 0 right now because the council hasn't approved it yet. So once it's approved, poof, then it comes off the register and you'll show 7,000 in the second column.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, if no other questions, I'll go on to the next page. So this is a continuance of additional funding sources for the parks budget. Primarily what you're seeing here on this page, starting with the Memorial Auditorium capital improvements. and along with various funding sources that start with UGM. These are primarily towards capital types of activities. Let me start with the Memorial Auditorium. That is driven by user fees for the auditorium improvements at $104,600. The various UGM funding sources come from developer fees for area-specific projects. And as you go down the list, you'll see there are various appropriations that have been established. The largest one is towards your middle, which is the citywide facility fees at $4,487,900. Below that, under the UGM fees, you'll see the Camp Fresno capital improvements.
Henry, can I interrupt a moment?
Absolutely.
I apologize. So I do want to update you folks that all these ones that are developer fees, you can see it adds up to about $7 million, $8 million. We have been approached by the development community to revisit the impact fees for parks, because in order to do an impact fee, we do it for water, fire, police, everything. We do them for parks. In order to do for the council to adopt a development fee, an impact fee for anything, there has to be a nexus study that demonstrates that this amount of charge is appropriate because it's consistent with either the burden or the benefit that that property will receive as a result of that amenity, police, fire, whatever it winds up being. So that nexus study was prepared prior to their Measure P being available. So there was no money in the system except for general fund and impact fees. And so you go ahead and you look at what are our needs, you do the division, you do the math, and you come up with a developer fee. Well, now there is funding available in the system for new parks and park maintenance. And so the developers have asked, hey, we think that the developer fee should be revisited in light of this new funding available. And so we have referred that over to the city attorney's office, and the city attorney's office is reviewing that request. We don't know what the answer is. We'll just wait and see what city attorney shares with us. But there is a proposal that the developer fee should be adjusted now that Measure P is available for new parks and maintenance. So I didn't want you to be surprised with that if you heard that later. Sorry, Henry, go ahead.
So again, you'll see below the UGM fees, you're seeing various funding sources that are paid by user fees, such as Camp Fresno, a Woodward Park amphitheater. In addition to those, we have the Municipal Golf Course Fund, which is driven by an agreement with the concessionaire. That's $918,400. And then lastly, what you're seeing is, in essence, the Parks Impact Bond Debt Service Fund, where we are then covering the debt service, making payments towards those respective costs. So in totality for the department's budget for FY22, you're going to see $35.2 million of budgeted revenue versus, again, an aggregate appropriation amount of $58,118,100. And again, these are the various funding sources that have been budgeted under the Parks budget department. In addition to that, I have a third slide. There is another funding source related to the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. However, that is held within the Planning and Development Department, but is accessible to the Parks Department for, in essence, 3 programs, if you will. The first one is the after-school recreation at about $1.6 million. The Senior Citizens Program at $422,400, and then Parks' various capital projects at $2.5 million. So in total for CDBG allocated appropriations, we're looking at about almost $4.5 million. If you were to add the Parks Department's budget plus the CDBG, you'll see then total expenditure budgeted is at $62.6 million. I'll stop here see if there's any additional questions by the commission. Okay.
So we will receive the more detailed line item links at some point after this meeting.
Correct. Again, I will circle back with Brianna and provide her those links. Those links will then direct you to the city's website. And once you're at the website, it will then go directly into the budget section.
Okay.
And there you'll see the budget document plus what's called a line item detail report, which will then show you a much deeper dive, if you will, by account for the respective funds, specifically if you're looking at Measure P. So again, I'll stop here.
Do any other commissioners have any questions for Henry? All right, thank you, Henry. No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to item 7B, workshop final fiscal year 2021-2022, Measure P appropriations for all of the buckets and how the appropriations match the percentage requirements outlined in the ordinance. Will staff or the administration please begin the workshop?
Tommy, would you like me to go over the schedule?
Yeah, keep going. Doing great.
All righty. So in front of you, you're now seeing a summary of the FY22 Measure P allocation. And from left to right, similar to the previous schedule, it starts off with the fund name. And I'll utilize, if you will, the first one, the Measure P existing part, capital O&M. So to the right of that line, then you're going to see a column called allocation percent. In this case, for this line, it was 46%. The line below that for new parks and facilities was 21.5%. Youth senior program job training, 8.5%. Arts and culture, 12%. And then the ATP trails beautify, 11.25%. And then lastly, program implementation and fiscal control at 0.75%. These percentages, there is a footnote 1, and those are directly from the section 7-1506 expenditure plan. So that is the fund, if you will, the source to those allocations. I wanted to give you then an understanding of what is based on the ordinance that was approved. Now going to the right, now you're going to see, if you will, the budget revenue percent based on the revenues, again, that were budgeted. You'll see that the percentages mirror what was established per the ordinance. So in totality, the revenue was budgeted at 29,573,100, and then it was spread against the various funds per the allocation percent. Going to the right of that, we're focusing on now the expenditure budget or the appropriations. So you'll see the allocation percent, and you'll see how these percentages are lower than what was assigned to the revenue side. And that's because we did not, for some of these line items, they're not budgeted equal to the revenue. So the percentage then would be lower respective to what was budgeted. So in total, if you add up all the various funds for the budgeted appropriations, you'll see it's at 74.97%. But the differential technically is what's not been appropriated. And that's the two columns to the right, budget remaining revenue percent, remaining revenue. So in essence, if you will, total revenue budgeted again, 29,573,100. We have adopted budget that has 22,172,200,000. In essence, in combination of all the Measure P fund types, there's 7.4 million that remains to be appropriated. That is the big picture of this schedule. I'll stop here and see if there's any questions.
I do have some questions. I requested this item to be on this agenda, and I was really hoping that we were going to see a little bit more robust information beyond the umbrella. This is really helpful, and I appreciate this very much. I'll focus on the line for active transportation, trails, beautify Fresno. It's the section I'm probably most familiar with. So within that 11.25%, there's some additional percentage allocation requirements. So for example, 18% for projects within the San Joaquin River Parkway, another percentage for different types of trails, so on and so forth. Can you tell us a little bit about how the budget appropriations line out based on those percentage requirements?
You know, I'd have to dig in a little deeper, but we really try to align to those percentages that were formalized by the ordinance. I don't have that level of detail in front of me, so unfortunately I can't really speak to what numbers those would equate to, other than the higher level, in this case of the 11.25%.
Henry, if you'd like, Scott Mosier, Public Works Director, Commissioner Parks, I'd be glad to speak to add a little bit to that. One of the things we did as a city leadership team under administration's direction is to not build brand new positions into the proposed budget for fiscal year 22 without those first coming before the commission. So for example, there's a category under the active transportation area for trail maintenance. And it's very specific for trail maintenance. And in that piece, we have identified the need, for example, for a trail crew. We're going to be adding 7 miles of the Midtown Trail this fiscal year, and we do not have staff to be able to handle that. So that's one of those items that would be coming before you in the meetings to come. Another component of that revenue we did not budget as of yet this year was the O&M or projects within the San Joaquin River Parkway area. So that's estimated for this fiscal year. The revenue is just over $700,000 in that subcategory. So those two items alone, that tallies up to about 1.1 million of that remaining 1.3 million to be budgeted. There was also another couple $100,000 still available from the subcategory about development, improvement, or rehabilitation projects. We do have one segment of the Midtown Trail, which is partially funded to be funded by Measure P, but there's still funding available in that subcategory. So more work to come.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do we have any other questions on this item? All right. Well, we will now move on to item 7C, workshop presentation of the agreement between City and Wallace Roberts and Todd LLC, also known as WRT. This item was originally scheduled to be a hearing, but it is actually a workshop, so the commission will not be taking any action following the presentation of this item. Will staff or the administration please begin the workshop?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott Mosier, Public Works Department. City Clerk, if we could also elevate both John Gibbs and Sheila Hakanapur to panelists. What we'd like to do, just briefly summarize from last meeting,
Scott, sorry
we-
to interrupt, but is John on by a phone number, or I have the other individual who's been on, who I promoted, but I don't see John.
All right. Thank you, Brianna. We should have John on shortly. If he's not readily apparent there, he may be messaging us or may be having some technical difficulties. But let me go ahead and summarize from our last presentation. And thank you, commissioners, for the chance to come before you again. Overall, this item, this workshop is pertaining to the WRT contract. And really, the focus is Measure P implementation. The original Parks Master Plan was a planning document. And the next step is really implementation. Just to highlight again some brief components, you've all received the scope of work, the cost proposal, and that agreement. But some major highlights are, again, technical support to the commission on some of those very tasks that are necessary early in Measure P implementation, such as assisting in the metrics of the neighborhoods of greatest need and our parks. Also, an update of the Parks Master Plan, considering we've acquired a number of facilities and built facilities since the initial master plan. We now have another community center, which has been partially renovated, ready to go. We've added splash pads, additional facilities, which involve then increased operational needs. So the Parks Master Plan update is a key component. Also, again, as discussed, really the goal is taking that planning level study, which did have park scores. It did have some high level life cycle cost figures, but did not have detailed cost estimates for each park facility, such that as a commission and administration and city council, such that we can plug those numbers in and go for the rehabilitation project. So it updates it to that level, provides additional staff training, and helps build the organization in the Parks Department necessary to really implement Measure P, and also addresses a senior center operational plan. So with that, Mr. Gibbs does have a PowerPoint, and I wanted to see if he is popped up.
Yes, give him 1 second.
Great. There he is. All right, good evening, John.
Hey, good evening.
All right.
You guys made good time on your agenda.
Perfect. So John, I've given a brief overview, and I was hoping, if possible, for you to screen share. There were a number of questions from commission members just about your team and the background, knowledge of the Fresno community or park system, and really what you've specialized in as a firm and with your team members.
Yeah, happy to share. And I have Sheila Hakimipur here on the line as well, and she and I will be working together on this. So I did put together just a couple of background slides, at least just that says who is WRT. I can do that pretty briefly. It focuses in on the work that Sheila and I and our firms have done together in Fresno, and just demonstrating some of our understanding of your community and you. And then I have just a couple high-level slides that summarize the scope of work. So if that's helpful, I can pop right through that. And I would just need a hand to make sure I'm able to share screen. And it looks like I can, and it looks like I may be already with that. Is that true?
Yes, we can see your screen, John.
Hey, excellent. All right. Just try to walk through this. You guys, some of you spoke last week that you know WRT and have worked with us. And I think many of you rightfully are, curious, who's WRT and why are you guys working on this? So just wanted to be able to share a little bit about WRT and the kind of work that we do. We're based here in San Francisco. We also have an office in Philadelphia. We work nationally on issues of community revitalization of parks and open space. And we're pretty committed to what parks do socially, what parks do economically for our environment and our quality of life. And we work, I think, understanding what all parks do and all that kind of go into the planning and the thinking of parks, whether it's placemaking, it's bringing people together. Equity and health, I think, was a huge driver with the Fresno Parks Master Plan, and I think really remains so today. The kind of scales of work that we work from a system plan or a trail plan for an entire city or an entire jurisdiction, City of Fresno, City of Austin, Arlington, Virginia, Dallas, working in San Luis Obispo for the Hayward Area Recreation District, City of Benicia, City of Fremont, City of East Palo Alto. So just a number of cities we have worked at that very broad scale. Completing these plans, also working in individual parks and a master plan for a park, and then down to an individual park where we're doing detailed design and we're implementing things. So just working really at all of those scales, and my work is primarily the West Coast, but as a firm, we're certainly working nationally, and I think that often helps us bring other ideas and other creative things into the process. Just clicking through just parks and things that we've worked on in the past. Anything from Santa Monica, it was a project that I got to work on in some of my past. The Fdr Park in Philadelphia was really all about community resiliency and some really cool engagement stuff that we got to do with the community and in that park, and envisioning some major renovation there. You can kind of see where it's positioned in the city there. Work at Lake Merritt and with the community of Oakland, from master plan to more detailed implementation and a really important revitalization for that park and in that community. To our work in Austin, this was a long-range plan, an overall park system plan, and a lot of really important engagement. We just won a national planning award for this plan, and it was just based on the depth of engagement that went into putting that vision, putting that plan together. A little work in Texas, just kind of big celebratory space. This is the Continental Bridge over the Trinity River right in the downtown, and just some of the cool stuff that came out of that project. Just wanted to reintroduce Sheila Hakimipur from Urban Diversity Design, and just a partner that I've worked with for many years on really great work. And Sheila, I think, was going to say hello.
Hi, everybody. Sheila Hakimipur here in Fresno. My consultant firm is Urban Diversity Design, and my primary work is on urban design planning and park planning, and a lot of engagement. On many projects that I've worked with John here in Fresno, I'm kind of the boots on the ground and working with a lot of project partners, making sure we kind of are this bridge between the different team members and the community, providing enough information and education and backup to make sure that all we do is a kind of a community-driven exercise. So it's not like we decide for the community, but it's just ultimately a program and plan that the community is involved and has the ownership. And John is going to go through some of our background work in Fresno, and there are many of the projects that we have been working together, from Park Master Plan, Elm Avenue, 41 and North, which was like working with Orange School students, doing tactical urbanism and working on the safety of the streets. We have an ongoing project that we're sort of about to launch with San Joaquin River Conservancy on from Camp Cheyenne to Melbourne Overlook, and it's going to be just reactivating the Camp Cheyenne, which has been closed for decades, and connecting it through a sort of a naturally driven design trail to the to Melbourne Overlook. So I'll let John talk more about the specifics of the projects, but we've just been here for a long time. We know Fresno, and we have worked with different communities, different areas of Fresno, and we have a very long relationship with a lot of community advocacy groups here in Fresno that we can engage and continue working with.
Yeah, thanks, Sheila. And just, another expanded point about the team. So on the Parks Master Plan that we led and completed a couple of years ago, that was WRT, that was Sheila from Urban Diversity Design, and it also involved Pros Consulting, and they're a national practice. They have worked as park and recreation directors and planners on the public side. They're now consultants, and they work really all over the country. They were a really strong partner of ours on your Parks and Recreation Master Plan, understanding recreation programming, but really understanding operations and maintenance of a park system. And they have lots of things that they do. They do more detailed assessments of facilities or business plans for the operations of different types of facilities. We work with them across the country on all sorts of things. And I just wanted to, because they're in our proposal and the scope of work, so I just wanted to add a little emphasis to them. Just some other projects that we've worked on, the Mariposa Plaza downtown. This was an activation project to first bring in public art. The art is now installed. We're now working on a detailed design to really revitalize, to reopen, reimagine the plaza and make it the centerpiece of downtown that everybody would like it to be. Been involved in Prop 68 projects with the Calwa Recreation District, but also for SFCETA. And we did in the spring, or I think it was actually maybe even late winter, just earlier this year, we just did some additional supplemental mapping, looking at key equity factors. This was a little update because we had done the original plans. We had a lot of the GIS files and data, and just want to, this is going to be the kind of thing that we're going to be then bringing back and providing to you. But we already initiated some of that work earlier in the year. So that's an easy thing for us to pick back up and to start to run with. Yeah, we've been here, done some cool stuff. This is the Elm Avenue community space with St. Rest Church, and that's me. That's Sheila. Peter Winch is a senior planner. He'll be involved in the project. And here's Christina Bejarano from our office. She popped down as well, and she may be involved in some of the engagement activities as well. Just in terms of what's in the scope of work, you guys have all seen this and have it in a lot of detail. I just tried to pull out some of the very high level things, hopefully that could be helpful. The first task was about Measure P commission support. This is just our support to your process. It includes drafting, authoring some technical memos. These would be some things that WRT would prepare. I think there was also, it would be an important one that Pros Consulting would also prepare. And we have some examples of what some of those titles may be in the detailed scope of work, but there's also some flexibility in terms of what exactly would be most helpful to the process and to keep you guys informed and have some useful information both available to you but also to the public. We would assist with an amendment. This would be a more minor update, but a few things have changed in the Parks Master Plan since it was adopted a couple of years ago. There's a couple of new parks, new sites. I think it would also be important to recognize the importance of Measure P in that document. So I think the intent was that it was not a complete redo, but just some update to reflect where we are today. And then we'd love to be a little bit more supportive during some of your meetings. So helping with a workshop, bringing in Mike Svets from Pros, who was my partner very much on the original plan, just to talk through operations and maintenance and let you guys pick their brain and just use us as a resource at any series of meetings. And if we're ever in person, we've allowed for that as well. So we're happy to be there. There's a second task, which is just a very specific, it's a pretty small task, but it's this would be Pros Consulting, just helping understand the programming and the operational considerations of a senior center. So they would pull in some benchmarks and offer up both to commission, but also to the city, just what does it take to run a senior center, and what are some examples of that, so that everybody's able to make a more educated decision about some of that space, some of the design and costs and things rolling that out. So that was a little second piece. And then the last piece I just wanted to touch on had to do with community engagement. And we think that it's really important that you guys aren't just isolated here, but we want to bring I want to bring resources to you, to the city, and to this process to make sure we're engaging the public more broadly. We think this could happen in 2 stages. The first stage is more about informing the public. It's just making sure that this is a transparent process. How does Measure P work? What's the methodology for some of these prioritizations? Because it's actually pretty well described in the measure. So we would just want to make that information available. Later on, we would imagine that there starts to be a more targeted inventory of parks, which have been determined through applying the equity principles of Measure P. And at that point, we would then be able to be a resource to get out into the community, out onto the ground, into those parks, and better understand what the priorities are between those parks, what types of improvements might be needed within some of those parks. And there's a lot of flexibility with exactly how we script that, but that's where that's our initial proposal and idea for how that might work. And then lastly, there are a couple of other items in there. Pros Consulting would be assisting the department with an organizational cultural assessment. We talked a little bit about this last week. This is just to say that the Parks Department has a new great director. We're in perhaps a different era of parks in Fresno, and how does this department operate as a world-class park and recreation leader, and Pros Consulting can really help with that. There's also a specific goal of developing a strategic plan and perhaps achieving CAPRA recommendations, which is a national accreditation. And there's some things you have to do and things you have to have in place in order to be eligible for that. And again, Pros Consulting can help with that. And those details are in the scope of work. And then lastly, this would be pretty important. It's also, I think, something that we haven't totally determined exactly how to do it or when to do it, but it would be a more detailed set of assessments in order to, once we've identified through the equity mapping, these are the priority projects, we've engaged the community to begin to understand what those kinds of things may be. We really want to, we all would really want to turn that into a much more clear set of budgets and projects that can start to move forward and can start to be put into place as a CIP process. I think that would be the last slide that I had, and hopefully that's helpful just to give an overview, and we can certainly, I'll stop sharing, but we can certainly come back to any of this or just look at the scope of work in details. We're here to help.
I have a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
First of all, I want to point out that I personally strongly support your firm, John and Sheila, because you folks are wonderful. They're very good at what you do. And I really think that I'm very happy that the city manager expedited the selection process to have someone on board ready to go with the right expertise and experience. Something else, it's kind of like a technical question. You're using Fresno Building Healthy Communities, which is wonderful. I totally support that too. However, technically, I want to make sure that we don't have a conflict of interest with our chair, because I believe she works for that organization. And I noticed an allocation of $100,000 for community outreach, and I don't know how much of that is supposed to go to Fresno Building Healthy Communities. That's just something that I want to make sure we do it right, so that it doesn't come back and later cause some problems. So I kind of would like to ask our city attorney to comment whether there might be a problem or not.
Is our city attorney on the line, or Christy, can you comment?
So my understanding is that this allocation, well, first off, this is a workshop, so the commission actually doesn't have an action item here. So there's no recommendation going to the city council from this commission. So it's city council on behalf of the city of Fresno that will be entering into this contract. So there's no conflict of interest with this commission.
Thank you.
You know, okay, we'll have more discussion of this for clarification purposes. I just think that we don't want to give the appearance of a conflict of interest in this particular area, and I would just say that that we should probably discuss further.
And if I may I just clarify a little bit about the role that we've identified here and sort of where we are in our process? That was acceptable. So WRT certainly is the prime for this. Sheila would really be in charge of engagement and working with really whatever on the ground sorts of networks are available to us in order to better engage communities. And we know that you can't do things from the top down. And so wherever this park is, wherever this community is that we're engaging, we want to find who those partners are. We think that Building Healthy Communities does have a pretty great network on the ground just to get out and be able to help talk to people. And that's really the role. At the time that we were drafting this, we certainly didn't understand who the chair of this commission might be. So there wasn't any awareness of a potential conflict. I think it's right to point this out because we don't want that, that appearance obviously to be there. If there's other organizations in other parts of the community which help us better engage that local community, I would think that Sheila and I would want to engage with them as well. And there's nothing specific in here that says it is Building Healthy Communities, nor a dollar amount.
But just to clarify, where Building Healthy Communities is listed is in the memorandum from our city manager about your unique qualifications. And obviously Building Healthy Communities is an obvious partner because of the incredible work that they do. But I had the same question about potential conflict of interest. So is there a potential funding allocation to that organization as a result of this contract, potentially?
Yes, there is a potential. I would want to pay for whatever services from any organization that was assisting, for sure.
So a follow-up question that may seem like it's not related. I'm curious about why this is a workshop now for us and not a hearing. And then how is this going to move forward to the council?
So just a point of clarification on that. This is a workshop because quite frankly, last week, it should not have been a hearing either. This money is already allocated in the current Measure P funding for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. So once it's already budgeted and been allocated, then the only items Measure P wise that will come to you will be anything that is going to be reallocated, kind of pivoting a project, or like you saw earlier, there are certain buckets that haven't been allocated yet because certain things need to happen beforehand. But this was already allocated in the current budget.
I'd like to point out that at the last meeting, we did take an action, and there was a vote by 9 commissioners, and our chair voted against the recommendation. So there have been actions, and we just have to be careful how we deal with these things to make sure that we don't provide any image or impression of improprieties.
So, Christy, can you explain how to move forward so there won't be a special conflict of interest on my behalf?
Well, again, I can only give the advice, and you can take action. In my opinion, there is no conflict of interest. This is an agreement that's being entered into and voted on by City Council. There is no action by this body. Mr. Barraza, you pointed out there was action last week, but that action was simply to recommend City Council take something off of their agenda, which, they chose to, but they didn't have to. But there was no action specifically on this contract. And there is no, because the funding is already allocated, there's no action to be had by this committee. So I don't see a conflict of interest.
You gave us very good information on the workshop on of interest, and I'm raising the points that were pointed. 34 years in county government, so I kind of know a little bit about interaction on those things. And in any way, I said what I needed to say. So that's it.
All right, do we have any more questions for John or Sheila? All right, well, thank you, John and Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commission.
We will now move on to item 7D, hearing on commission ad hoc subcommittees, assignments, and/or appointments. I would like to consider forming subcommittees for some of these tasks that this commission must take up. Those tasks include working with the Arts Council to come up with the cultural arts plan, working with the city to update the master parks plan, and coming up with the definition of the highest needs neighborhood. So I think that we're going to have a lot of work cut out for us. And I don't know if all the commission members would like to work on every single task that we're supposed to do, or if they would like to form subcommittees. So I was just saying that, I would like to form some subcommittees for the tasks that we must take up. For instance, the cultural arts plan, like if it's 9 of us, maybe not all 9 of us would like to work on all these different little tasks. So that's why I'm presenting it like this. So I just wanted to know how you guys may feel about it.
Chairman, I think that's a good idea. This is Commissioner Cummings. A lot of feedback.
Thank you.
So I think it's a good idea. And I would question, should I assume that we want some level of background and expertise on these committees that we choose, or do you think it would be better to have less expertise?
I think that we all have expertise in all areas. So it's just about which ones we would like to be on, which commissioners would like to be on the subcommittees. I think we were all selected because of our expertises that we have in parks, arts, and trails. So it's just about which subcommittee each commissioner would like to work on.
Okay, and you mentioned that you could join one or multiple committees?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just real quick, a point of that I should make here. Any subcommittee that's being formed should be limited to 4 or less members to make sure that we are in compliance with the Brown Act. So.
All right, do we have any other questions about this item?
A quick question, Chair McCoy. Were you thinking that these committees would meet like in addition to the commission meeting and to kind of relieve some of the work of the commission? Like what maybe describe just a little bit more about what you're envisioning for this.
I'm envisioning the subcommittees to meet, to take up some of the work that we're tasked to do, and then when we have our regular meetings, to do a report out to the whole commission. And then maybe we can take the vote there, or if we agree or not agree, we can have a discussion about it. But I'm just envisioning the subcommittees doing the groundwork and then presenting to the full commission during our meetings.
And just for some more information for you, these would be ad hoc subcommittees, which means that they have a specific purpose, whether it's the Master Parks Plan, the Cultural Arts Plan, or the highest needs neighborhoods. As long as it's kept below the 5 members, you can meet outside without having to schedule hearings for the public. And then you could bring that information back to this commission, as long as they are ad hoc committees.
I'm happy to sign up.
All right, do we have any other questions, or can we get someone to motion? Is there a motion to approve the formation of a cultural arts plan, master parks plan, and the highest need neighborhoods ad hoc subcommittees?
I'll move.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Cummings.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. Is there any member of the public who would like to make a comment about the current item we are discussing? You will have 3 minutes.
Yes, we have Sharon Weaver.
I actually had my hand up about the previous item, which was not taken out for public comment. It was not about this item.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Weaver.
And that is all.
Are there any commission members who would like to discuss the proposed committees?
I mean, I do like to bring up the fact that Commissioner Vang is not here. So, her absence may be justification to move this to a different meeting.
Is that a motion to have this moved to a different meeting where Commissioner Vang will be here?
Yeah, no, it's not a motion, it's more so a discussion. I just believe that, all the commissioners should be present. So yeah, I guess it is a motion, if I can make a motion right now.
All right, do we have a second?
Could I ask a clarifying question, Commissioner Singh? Would you be open to approving the concept of developing the committees tonight and then waiting until we have all of our commissioners present to receive the assignments?
Yeah, that works.
So could that be like a friendly amendment to my motion, or I could remake the motion?
Well, your motion as it stands is to form the subcommittees. You haven't technically assigned anybody to them.
I think the concern I have when we want to continue a discussion because a board member or a commissioner is not here, I don't think that sets a good precedent. I really like the idea of creating subcommittees, and I think in concept we could approve that. And I know that we'll have the flexibility to add or modify or along the way, depending on the projects, the challenges. If you're looking for a motion, I'm ready to make a motion that we proceed with the formation of those subcommittees with further discussion as to who actually joins them or and with the possibility that they may be expanded depending on what challenges we encounter down the road.
Commissioner Barraza, is that the motion that you're making?
Yes.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that motion? All right.
What
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I'm a little confused. I thought we already had a motion on the floor and that we need to act on that before we take up another motion. So could I have some clarification, Christy, please?
Yeah, so you have a motion and a second, so you do have a standing motion. However, other motions can be made and seconded in the meantime, but then we would go out to vote and they would be voted on in order of the order that they were made. So you can have competing motions sitting.
Are the motions competing though? I mean, I feel like they're very similar to each other.
Yeah, they are. They're not really competing.
All right, can we do a roll call vote on the first motion?
Yes, that's just, okay. So it's Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Barraza, Commissioner Barraza,
I think he might be frozen.
okay. Commissioner Singh,
So is this is this amended motion? Or is
No,
this,
this is the first one to approve it.
okay, and,
to approve the formations of.
okay, and this doesn't include, assigning the roles today, right?
No,
does not.
it doesn't.
Okay,
Just
then I
the
vote,
formation.
I vote yes.
Commissioner Cummings,
I approve.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Apuda,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dolan,
Yes.
and Chair McCoy.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
And can we also take a roll call vote on the other motion that's on the table, please?
I'd never received a second, therefore it died.
Okay, thank you.
Before we continue, just I'm concerned about not getting Commissioner Barraza's vote. I think he tried to vote, but we've lost him, and I would hate for us to move forward without hearing from him. So I don't know if we've already closed it out and it's already passed, but I'm just uncomfortable with that.
Christy?
Yeah,
Full vote.
so, I mean, so it doesn't even look like he's coming back online right now. So he can register his vote. The outcome of the vote won't change though. It'll still pass.
Commissioner Barraza,
There. Okay, my apologies. Getting this thing that turns off sometimes.
it might be better, Commissioner Barraza, and helpful if you can turn off your video. You might be able to save some internet.
What you got?
I got 8 ready.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Barraza, can you hear us? Christy, can we proceed with the next item on the meeting?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. We will now move on to item 7E, the hearing on approval of the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Commission meeting schedule through the end of 2021. The commission is currently set to meet the first and third Monday of each month. I would like to approve an official schedule with dates through the end of the year. If at any time the commission does not have business that needs to be conducted during a scheduled meeting, we can consider canceling the meeting. The official schedule, if approved, would be August 2nd and August 16th, September 6th and September 20th, October 4th and October 18th, November 1st and November 15th, and December 6th and December 20th.
Chair McCoy?
Yes.
September 6th is a holiday.
Okay, Christy, September 6th is Labor Day.
Would you guys like to move that to the 13th and the 20th?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to amend September calendar to reflect Monday the 13th and Monday the 20th.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the amended proposed commission schedule through the end of 2021? Or those dates don't work for the commission?
Are we waiting for a motion?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Before we vote, is there a member of the public who would like to make a comment about the current item we are discussing? You will have 3 minutes.
Yes, we have Gabriel Lozano. Gabriel?
I just wanted to make a general statement at the end of the proceedings. I just wanted to talk about a letter that was sent in about the 49-acre park and 2155 South Beach. Is that do I do it right now, or do you want me to wait till the end?
We had public comment earlier on in the meeting. Sorry, we had unscheduled communication earlier on in the meeting.
Next, we have Michelle.
When the official...
Michelle?
I'm muted, sorry. I'm the director of the Fresno Art Museum, and I want to congratulate all of you for your new positions. We are very excited to have your support in the arts and culture sector of Fresno. Will these future meetings be available to us by Zoom as this one was?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I wanted to make a comment that when the official notification of today's meeting went out, the unscheduled communications appeared at the bottom of the agenda. I realized that we can change the order of the agenda, but for the public that were not here because they didn't know we were going to be changing that rule, I think it's unfair not to provide to that at this point.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Barraza. When we started the meeting, we talked about the amended agenda, and there was a motion on the floor in a second, and we voted and it passed 9-0. Moving forward, all future meetings, unscheduled communication will be at the beginning of the meeting, since some of these meetings go to 9:30, 10:30, 11 o'clock sometimes. It'd be best to have unscheduled communication at the beginning of the meeting instead of having residents wait that long to have a comment.
Okay, would you like me to take roll on our motion?
Yes, please.
What's otherwise?
Commissioner Parks?
Yes.
Commissioner Barraza?
I'm going to abstain because I haven't been able to.
Okay. Commissioner Singh?
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Apuda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dolan?
Yes.
And Chair McCoy?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Are there any commission members who would like to discuss the proposed agreement?
What agreement?
No, I think that was left over.
Okay, that was left over. Sorry. Thank you for that. I'm gonna adjourn this meeting at 7:59.
At 6:59.
I mean 6:59. I'm so used to getting out at 9. Sorry about that. At 6:59. Thank you guys. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Right.
Thank you all. Good night.